And we're live. Welcome, everybody. This is the Reality Czars podcast, and I'm your only host today, Nate. And I am stoked to bring on Craig Harguess, the man, the myth, the legend, the bad Roman himself. What's up, man?
What's happening, man? How you been?
Good. Dude, I've been so farting busy, dude. I'm going to try not to drop
Who are you
any
telling? Who are you
curses
telling?
because we're... We'll try not to drop any curses because we're on the Bad Romans. We're going live. We're live right now on the Bad Romans Twitter, as well as the Reality Czars Twitter and on our YouTube. So, Craig, I'm stoked to have you on here, dude. You've been hustling too, dude. You guys have been putting out lots of articles. You guys have been putting out tons of podcasts, and I've been making you memes. And something that you guys are doing, you're expanding the brand. You guys just did something brand fucking new. I just dropped an F-bomb. I was trying not to do that.
It's all good, man.
And you guys just started a brand new website, and let's talk about it, man. Tell the audience what you guys are up to.
Yeah, man. When you said I've been hustling, I don't even know if hustling is the correct word to use, but yeah, we've been working a lot. We've been working pretty hard, with the Bad Roman as usual. But we started the No Keep It Christ network, and we are very, 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 very excited about that, actually, because...
Okay, you sound much better.
Okay, there it is. Sorry, but yeah, Quinn got on me about where I put my mic, so I forgot to put my mic in front of my face today. Anyway, yeah, we started this new network, the No Keep It Christ network, and it was something that I had been thinking about for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I think you go back to the first time I was on the Toward Anarchy podcast. I noticed that they were network. He was a part of the Republic Broadcasting Network, and I didn't really know much about it, but you could go to that website and you could see all these different types of content that his show was a part of. I was like, well, that's pretty cool. It was something that was always kind of stuck in the back of my head at the time. And then I talked to some folks, about maybe doing a network at some point. I talked to our producer about it, maybe doing a network, starting a network, and there was some talk, and then it just kind of went, off to the side and just never really gained any traction. And then the longer the Bad Roman podcast went, the project went, we started noticing a lot of projects started doing this. This is kind of the way people are starting to go in this route as far as, starting their own networks. And it's basically a spot where you can cross promote one another and with people with like-minded ideals and what we're doing, and so that's what we did. I reached out to my friend Matt from Expedition 44, and I'm sad that neither one of them could be with us. Peter Rollo from Rival Nations reached out to them, and man, that's what we're doing right now. It's pretty cool. The website looks great. We're really excited, and it's a one of a kind thing. There's not another network out there like this. It's brand new, and there's a lot of Christian anarchists out there, and they're doing their own thing, but there's not a No Keep It Christ network like we've got right now. I mean, like, we're very, very specific about the what we believe. We made a statement of beliefs for the website as well. Like, it's very specific what we believe. There's not going to be any promotion of politicians or political factions or the police or the military, any of that stuff. It's all very Jesus centric. Like, we're getting back to that guy, the guy that we're supposed to be following as Christians anyway. And there ain't nothing out there like that. I promise you. You're not going to find. We actually made sure from that fact that there was nothing out there like this. There was no other No Keep It Christ network. But yeah, man, we're super excited about it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, for my audience, they know that I'm a Christian anarchist, but I don't really talk about it too much because I'm always talking about other, like, odd, strange things. So, like, I don't try to mix the two because I don't always feel like I'm being the best ambassador for Christ when I'm talking about, some wild stuff. But
well, this is an odd, strange thing. I mean, let's be real. I mean, this is an odd, strange thing. Like when I say there's nothing out there like this, there's nothing out there like. We are the Sasquatch of the Christian networks. I promise you. There's nothing out there like this. It's going to be it's total. And we just added somebody new to the network, and we're going to be adding more folks along the way that come along. But before they come onto the network, they read the statement of beliefs and they understand, what we're about. There's not going to be any of this because. I mean, you know me, man. You know me. You know me. I mean, there were some things that we put in the statement of beliefs that I was very specific about, that I needed to know that it was going to be there, because if it changes, you know me.
I think you have to be very explicit with what you. Yeah, I don't know. There's a saying, and I think that this is absolutely true in a lot of different ways. There's this saying, and I can't remember who said it. I think it was, who the heck was that? Anyways, but it was like, this saying was said that it's like, if something doesn't explicitly start right wing, it'll turn left wing, which I think is just true.
Yeah.
But not that you guys are right wing, but I'm saying, like, you need to establish, like, this is explicitly no king but Christ, so that you don't get some folks in there that are like, well, I'm a Christian and I'm an anarchist, but I think you should vote for the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's not going to happen. And I mean, how stubborn I am about this very topic. I mean, just how um I think once if you get to a point where you start compromising one little simple principle about anything that you're doing, about anything you're talking about, then it's easy to start compromising another principle. You compromise something different, and then it just turned into a whole. It turns into a problem. I mean, because you just start compromising everything because you're just trying to make everybody happy. I mean, you can't make everybody happy. That's impossible.
No king but Christ in the Libertarian Party.
It doesn't work, man. I don't think Jesus is walking around wearing a vote for Dave Smith T-shirt right now. I don't think he is.
He's got a big porcupine.
Does he? Yeah. I missed that memo. I did not get that memo.
Don't tread on me. He's got on his.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did not get that T-shirt.
Yeah, buddy. Some goofy stuff. The Lulbertarians. Well, I don't know. Some of them would call us Lulbertarians too, I guess. But whatever.
I've never even understood that term, to be honest. I've seen people say that. I don't know what it means.
I mean, I think it can be applied to a couple different types of libertarians. One being like, you can even throw the ANCAPs in, the ones that are like goofballs that think that like power is the problem, which it is. But it's like, they think if they ignore the situation that everything's going to be fine. And they're just like, they're also apologists for like big business because that's private. They're like, it's like the goofballs that are like, that will just be fine with like Pfizer, like giving out jabs and shit. And they'll be like, well, that's private business and people should be able to choose about that. And you're just like, it's not private. The government gave them shit tons of money. They're also given like false monopolies, and they're also given like immunity from being sued. So like Pfizer's not a good guy, dork. Like
yeah. Yeah.
Those are Lulbertarians. And
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I get it. Like, I mean, I see a lot of these things, a lot of these phrases thrown around. I mean, you have some of the most fantastic comebacks for a lot of the stuff that I see with the stuff. Like I can text you something and you'll come up with this meme for the Bad Roman Project, which I'm like, man, this guy's so creative. I could have never even thought about this stuff, but or even figured out how to do this. But for some reason, somehow you're able to do this, and it's very impressive to me. I wish I had that ability like Nathan does.
I was a natural born shit poster. I don't know.
Yeah, God created you for a reason.
He made me extra sassy and kind of an asshole.
Yeah, and then somehow you came across the Bad Roman, so here we are, and we're talking about no king but Christ. I love this topic, man. It's my favorite one. It's one thing that I was talking to somebody the other day about. They're wanting to get me on their show. And the word anarchy is well, I mean, it's a buzzword. It's something I talked to Lily Forrester about on the show. Because I saw a lot of anarchists not behaving like anarchists and still calling themselves anarchists. I became very frustrated with the terminology, because it doesn't mean anything anymore. But I was trying to ease these people's mind. It's like, you can get me on the show, and we don't even have to talk about anarchy, but I will never shy away from no king but Christ, because the two words are synonymous. They should be. The problem is they're not these days, and it's very, like I said, I'm very particular about a lot of things, but I get very frustrated with just using that word, because it doesn't mean anything like it's supposed to. It doesn't mean, when I say anarchy, I know what it means. You know what it means. But when you're
Yeah,
talking
and
to
anarchy has so many different connotations attached to it, because I struggle with using. I don't even like to use like words like that anymore to describe myself. Just like I don't like to use the word capitalism anymore either. Like I'm a market anarchist myself, but like capitalism is such an ugly, weird word, because I mean it was like coined by communists, and so they made the description. It's their word, and then idiots put themselves, like they labeled themselves, well, I'm a capitalist, and you're like, well, you're every idiot that, anyways. So I don't even like to use the word anarchy either, because that has connotations attached to it as well, and different like ideas and what people think about it. It's just like that's why no king but Christ is a perfect label for this, because it's saying we serve no master but Christ, and that should be all that has to be said.
well, I mean, I've talked to folks so much about this, and even folks I've had on the show who would not claim to be an anarchist, but they're Christians. But they understand that when you say, or even secular anarchists, they understand when you say you're a Christian, they understand that you do have no king but Christ. And it was something that was weird. When I first started understanding the the idea of anarchy, is I ran into a lot of secular anarchists who were so, you can't have a king, no kings, no masters, and I've told them point blank every time, listen, you have to understand something very quickly. You have an ally in Christian anarchists, but if I can't keep my Christ, then you can keep your anarchy, because I don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, yeah.
My
No, I
my
mean
Christianity is more important to me than your idea of anarchy. I'm just it
that's
is.
just another flavor of autistic people, and I love them. And like all us anarchists, like I'm not kidding when I say 97% of anarchists are autistic, and we're also really bright. A lot of the anarchists, a lot of the libertarians, like if autism didn't exist, the libertarian movement and the anarchist movement would end tomorrow.
I've heard you talk about that so much, about folks being autistic. I
It
don't
is.
know.
I mean, it's just people that are a little Asperger's. They're a little. What's the? It's not neuro. They're not neurotypical. Like we are. What the hell do they call that? We're. Anyways, we're not neurotypical. We're the fucking weirdos, dude. Our brain just works differently, and we're able to think outside the box a little bit. And some of them, unfortunately, some of the Aspergery types of folks, you either go one way or the other. You either go by authority, or you question authority radically. So it's like it's one or the other. It's pretty interesting, because I definitely have some autistic friends that are just like, whatever the government says, I have to read all the. Anyways, it just sucks. But they're brilliant, fucking wonderful people. They can't think outside the box in any way, shape, or form. We've got a comment here. Provo Kid, individualist, anarchist here. What's up, Provo Kid? We love you, buddy.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Individualist anarchist. I thought that's what anarchy is, was just individualism.
Well, that's what. Oh gosh, darn it! What's his name? He made his own. Because he is an individualist anarchist. He was the father of that. Lysander Spooner.
Okay.
Lysander Spooner was an individualist anarchist, and so like a lot of people see him as like the father of like modern libertarianism in a lot of different ways. But he had his own different like beliefs and things. So individualist anarchists are that's probably close to what I am. But
Well, I mean, that's
I'm
the way I've
I'm a
always
black
understood
market
it.
anarchist as well. So I'm more of an agorist than the like Samuel L. Konkin.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, buddy. There are many types of anarchy. Yes, there is, Provo Kid.
Well, there's just speaking of that just that term. I mean, that's why I've shied away from even using anarchy, because there are a lot of different terms, a lot of different meanings to it, and honestly, the phrase has become culturally hijacked. I mean, you remember when the riots were going on, and you had some like Donald Trump when he was president, and Sean Hannity on Fox News, they were calling this anarchy. I'm like, I was having this conversation
Well,
with somebody the other
that's
day.
where I live. They said that we're an outgrowth of well, I don't what the hell did they call it? Yeah, because Portland, Oregon was deemed not agorist, an anarchist uh anyways, yeah, we were supposed to be fucking anarchists out here, and we were like a domestic terror threat, and it was just a bunch of goofy dorks with like purple hair that were like throwing Molotov cocktails. And
Well, I remember sitting in the break room at work, and I was listening. We have two TVs, and I know you've heard me talk about this. We got Fox News and we got ESPN in the break room. And I was listening to Sean Hannity and Donald Trump on Fox News, and I was sitting there trying to enjoy my lunch break, right? And I kept listening to them call these people anarchists, and I took a deep breath, and my break was ending soon, and I could feel the hair on the back of my neck starting to stand up, and I was just getting more and more frustrated. I finally stood up. I said, "That's not anarchy. That is not anarchy. What they're calling that. That's not anarchy." And people just kind of looked at me like this guy just lost his mind and just went crazy in front of everybody. And I just went on a 5-minute spill about what anarchism is. And then I walked out of the break room, and I'm sure there was a lot of words said after I left, but I didn't care. So you got to say it at some point.
that Craig's a real libtard.
Yeah, he's not supporting my Donald Trump. No, I didn't. You're correct.
There you go, buddy. Craig is 100% right. There you go. Yeah,
Nice.
buddy. That is not. Yeah, that's. Well, see, that's why I don't like to call myself an anarchist sometimes, just because, like, to say that they're not anarchists would be kind of wrong, because those are the psycho retards that invented the term anarchy.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at like the leftists, like in Europe and things like that, they were violent nut jobs. Those are the ones that are like setting bombs and trying to like shoot like politicians and trying to like blow up buses, and like those people were leftist anarchists. And so they kind of do have the right to that term, I guess. So I can't like say that they're not anarchists, but they're also like total fucking status, because they say that they hate the state, but then they just want to be the state. They hate the state that's in charge, but like they are collectivists and they want to have like this massive collective, and if you disagree with them, they want to be able to use the force to make you. And to me, that's a government, whatever you want to call that, whatever it is. When you have a collective that can like collectively punish people, that can come and like redistribute and take your property, who's in charge of that? Because whoever gets to be in charge of that, I call a government. So I mean, they
Yeah.
are fucking status. They just don't fucking admit it.
Well, I got asked this the other day, especially they're like, because when they're trying to understand what we're talking about with no king but Christ, like even talking to Christians, they know, they say no king but Christ, but there's always this but. And it
But
was like, but what does it look like?
but
You know, and
King David was a
I
flawed man, just like Donald Trump.
yeah, but guess what? I don't follow David either. I follow Jesus Christ. And somebody, that's another thing too. Well, Paul said this. I was like, yeah, Paul said a lot of great things in the Bible, but I don't follow Paul either. I follow Jesus. It's what I've tried to do with my own understanding of my faith is just get back to the basics, the very basic teachings of Christ. And when you talk to I mean, I've had atheists on the show, and when you talk to them, they understand the teachings of Christ and they appreciate the basic teachings of Christ. But then they look at a Christian and see how a Christian's behaving. And it reminds me of that quote from Gandhi. Gandhi has this, what people have their own problems with Gandhi or whatever, but he said something so brilliant. He said, and it's so true, and it's something that I understand how people on the outside are looking in and they see this. He goes, I like your Christ, but I don't like your Christianity.
Yeah.
And when you when you take, if Christians really took a step
I
back
don't
and
like your
really,
Christians. Yeah, he goes,
yeah,
I
you
like
take
your
a step
Christ. I
back
don't
and
like your Christians.
take a
Yeah.
step back and listen to what he was saying. It's not, he likes the idea of what Jesus was talking about. The problem is Christians have screwed this up along the way, and it's sad. And that's what we're trying to do,
Well,
get back with the No
humans are
Kingdom of Christ
flawed, man.
network, is
But
just get back to that very basic thing.
I was looking into. Oh, I mean, I actually just put out an episode with a guy named Ryan Dawson, and we were talking about American Zionism quite a bit and Zionism in general. But like, you can see where American Christianity was twisted. So like, early American Christianity, like the Christian churches, like I want to say it was Murray Rothbard's book that I was reading. I think it was man, what's that one? Anyways, it's about American history, and early on, the American Christian churches were very anti-state because Christian churches in general had been so oppressed by like because the Catholic Church had been tied to the state, right? And then it was so then England had the what is the dumb one that Nick is. What is that? The Catholic, basically the Catholic flavor of Christians. What are they called? You know what I'm talking about?
The Orthodox
Not
Church.
Orthodox. Anyways, whatever the heck they are, the Anglicans, right? So
Oh,
then,
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, that's just another flavor of it's Catholic light with
I've actually
they're
got
British.
well, it's funny because I've actually got an episode scheduled with Nick to talk about this piece he wrote, this essay he wrote for his university, for Duke University, and it's fantastic. He was comparing Tolstoy and Martin Luther King Jr. and how they went about.
You wouldn't have had a Martin Luther King Jr. without a Tolstoy. It is
Right,
pretty interesting. Yeah.
and they're
You would
very
have had a Gandhi without a Tolstoy either. They were
right.
both studying Tolstoy like crazy.
Right,
Yeah.
and they all come to an agreement on certain things, but there was different flavors. Like Martin Luther King, I think this is something that has been frustrating for me when it came to MLK, is that he was doing such great things, but he was still trying to do it through the state.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, yes, he was. I mean, he was a socialist, dude. I mean, and is admittedly a socialist. So, I mean, he definitely wanted to work within the system and things like that. But I mean, that's where you can like chew the meat and spit out the bones. Like, I mean,
we could sit here and pick
MLK was
apart
also a piece of
everything.
shit. Yeah, MLK was also a giant piece of shit with like he was like cheating on his wife a bunch, and if those CIA files are correct or if FBI files are correct, then like he might have been a rapist too. I don't know. That's pretty awful. But we can talk about the good things about him. That he was it was about civil disobedience and about like fighting the power by doing it in a peaceful way. And I think that is the only way that you're actually going to see the results that you want to see. So obviously a flawed person like we all are, but that part we can look at and be like, that he's 100% correct. But what I was going to say about the American church was like these Protestants that first came over here, all the different flavors of Protestant, like the Quakers and the Calvinists and all these other guys at the time were pretty anti-state. They wanted to have a separation between the state and the church, solely because they knew that all of these churches before had like taken up the gun, right? Like it was the Catholics that were in charge, then the Anglicans were in charge. Like that was like the state religion. And so like they had gotten so much oppression that they had actually come over here looking for freedom. Like they had come here for looking for religious freedom. And so like I'm trying to remember who the heck it was, man. Anyways, I think it was from a Murray Rothbard book that I was reading, but it also could have been from CJ from Dangerous History podcast. Pretty sure that's his name of his podcast. Anyways, he's awesome. But he was like talking about different like basically sermons that these pastors were giving that were just talking about like how we are supposed to serve Christ and not supposed to serve the state. Like there was just a huge separation. And it was like really fascinating just how anti-state and anti-authoritarian the early Christian church was here in the United States until the Schofield shit. I'm trying to remember who that was. But anyways, they it was basically a Zionist takeover of Christianity here in America, like evangelical Christianity, and that's where the dispensationalism comes in. And so they like tried to like they try to say that like the American church, or I mean the church in general, like the Christianity is like broken up into parts and segments, and that like uh, the third temple has to be built in Jerusalem for Jesus to come back. And so they basically like turned into this crazy death cult, and they are like they will support Israel no matter what. Like in like the Israeli state, you know what I mean? Like I don't have a problem with Jewish people. I have a problem with the Israeli state. The same way I have a problem with the United States. The same reason, like the state of the, you know what I'm saying? And these people are just like apologists for like any atrocities that happen to the Palestinians. These same people will think it's like well, I don't even know if they think it's terrible what the United States did to the American Indians. They probably kind of like it. Um, but like you can see this happening in modern times right now, what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians, dude. And they support every single war. They support every single dollar that gets given to the state of Israel because they need these weapons because it just turned the American Christian movement into this giant statist right wing psycho death cult. And so now, like, I'd say probably 75% of the Christians in the United States are Christian Zionists, which means that they are right wingers. They've tied it into the Republican Party. And now it's like anybody that supports Israel is who we vote for. And so this is where you get like the Donald Trumps. This is where you get, who said jackass in Florida? Ron DeSantis. Like, they're all about Ron DeSantis. And so all of these right wing Christians are just they're just giant status now when they weren't. And this also, I mean, this also has to do. People love Billy Graham, but Billy Graham was really big on this too, getting the Christian movement tied into politics.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too. And you know how much time I spent studying just the early church, you know, prior to Constantine, and you see you talked about how the early church in America was very anti-state and all this stuff. But if you just go all the way back, even just to the early church fathers, when it came to how anti-state they were, like they just really were not interested in it. It was not their thing. They knew very clearly who their king was. You know, Tertullian is one of my favorites to read when it comes to the state and how the Christians is to engage it. And the stuff he was writing down, man, was so. He's described as a fiery person. I don't even know if that is appropriate because he was fiery is good, but man, he would tell the Roman Empire, he goes, "We're not interested in your meetings. The affairs of the state are completely foreign to us." And the idea that Christians today do not understand that the affairs of the state should be completely foreign to us. Why have we become so entangled with this garbage that we've lost our way to not even follow even our own king? You know, when you go back to 1 Samuel 8, when the Israelites were demanding a king, and Samuel was upset about it, and God himself, he said, man, they didn't reject you, they're rejecting me. And if rejection of God is not a sin, then I don't know what a sin is anymore. Okay, so and God spelled out very quickly what's going to happen when you demand a king other than him, and it's still happening today. You know, it's the state of Christianity today is very sad, and that's what we focus on so much on the Bad Roman podcast. Is let's just get back to that guy, you know, the guy that has our best interest in mind, the one that really wants what's best for us. We already have a king. Why are you out there demanding a king like Donald Trump or Joe Biden, whatever side you come across? But why? You already have Jesus. It doesn't make any sense. If Christians really took this seriously, it does not make any sense why we are so infatuated with the political system of America. You know, you were talking about Israel, and I was that guy that you were describing a while ago. I was that guy. You know, there was a point in my life where, and it's embarrassing to say this, but I'm not ashamed, or I'm not afraid to put it out there. There was a time in my life that I really believed that God created America just to protect Israel.
Yeah, that's exactly what they. Yeah, because we are a blessed nation. This is part of the American exceptionalist myth mythos that like we are
But I don't, I
the
don't know where that came from.
exceptional country. The Schofield Bible, man, this all came from this happened around like
But I was
1920,
hearing it in
1900.
church. I was hearing it in church.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Well,
hearing it from
because you
behind the
were
pulpit.
you were a Southern Baptist, right?
I spent a lot of my time in the
Yeah.
Southern Baptist Church.
The Southern Baptist Church is like, dude, that's where all of this is really coming from, man. And that, I mean, they're one of the biggest sects of Christianity in the United States, and so they're
Well,
definitely
I
big on
remember
pushing
sitting in church
this.
service and one time, and the pastor had all the members of the military stand up. It was Veterans Day or Memorial Day or something, and we all clapped and thanked them for their service. And then we stood up and pledged allegiance to the flag in church.
Yeah,
And
man.
it reminds me of something that Tertullian also said. He said, "Shall we carry a flag? It's a rival to Christ."
Yep.
And when you say that to, I love these things that come across my Facebook feed, and I see something. You got Jesus hugging the American flag, all this garbage you can buy, and you got people commenting on these threads like, "God bless America." Yes, so they're so in love with this, and I'll just drop that. Shall we carry a flag? It's a rival to Christ, and I'll quote Tertullian. And when you say that, nobody's heard that. And and the comments are, the people that respond to me, it's so much fun for me.
Jesus Christ was from America.
Yeah, yeah, probably in Texas. He's probably from Texas. That's what I'm going with. Jesus made Texas for Americans.
Buddy, it's it's kind of sad and pathetic, and I get it because like I mean these people aren't necessarily they were where we were at like 5, 10, like for me that was more like 20 years ago, but that's just what they were taught. That's what they know. They do love Jesus. They unfortunately are brainwashed into this huge mishmash, and like I don't hold it against them. I try to teach them.
Yeah.
But I also know that that's where I came from, and that's where my mom is today.
Oh man,
My mom is all about it.
I mean, I was born and raised in West Texas. I mean, so who are you talking to? Most of my family are still there, and I love them, and I know they love Jesus. I know that, but they're misinformed because they're believing something from somebody behind a pulpit is giving them bad information. It's something we did an episode for just to launch the network on Expedition 44, and they've got a huge subscriber list on YouTube and just on its own. And we were talking about a little bit about this, and I said I try not to. I'm like you. I love them. They're Christians, but I think they're misinformed. And I brought this up. I said I know that a lot of folks who are Christians do really genuinely love Jesus, and they want what's best for but they're going about it the wrong way. They're trying to do it through the state. Like it doesn't make any sense I've gotten to a point too, excuse me, that when the stuff I'm talking about on our own podcast and the stuff we're trying to do with the network is, I understand not everybody's where I'm at when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to no king but Christ. But I could sit behind a microphone and scream at Christians about it all day, but it's not going to resonate. And once they figure it out, it's going to mean more to them. And once they understand it themselves, it's going to be more to them. And there's no going back. Everybody that's involved with the network right now, we all understand that. Once you get to this point of, okay, no king but Christ, we're not going to participate in the affairs of the state. As Tertullian said, we're not going to participate because we already have a king. And once you're there, we already know. And there's no way we can turn around and go the other way, because once you really understand that truth, there ain't no going back. There's no going back. I mean, you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but what's interesting too, though, is that I think a lot of American Christians right now are ripe for that type of, for this type of, my brain's not working. It's early in the morning, but like I think that they're right for this sort of message, right? Like, so the church that I go to, It's very Zionist, very Zionist. I mean, it's borderline messianic. So like the majority of the people at my church, not the majority, a few of them are like wearing yarmulkes, or the little kippas, the little hats. You know what I mean? They've got like prayer shells on. They blow shofars. It's a very like Jewish church. Um, but it's very Christ centered. It's messianic. So like we worship Jesus Christ, and it's even charismatic, which is a little. I know that scares you guys.
Not necessarily, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because if you've seen any of this going on with this in Kentucky with this, is it Asbury revival? I stopped calling it revival because apparently that was triggering a lot of Christians, and so I just call it a picnic now. They're just having a picnic and they're hanging out and praising Jesus. I don't know how you feel about what's going on. We haven't really talked about it,
I have no idea. I don't even know what's going on. But I saw your somebody in our group is saying revivals aren't a thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, but like whatever you want to call that, you can like whatever you want to call like. Is there? I don't know. I think it's just an argument of semantics. I think that there's a time and a place sometimes, and that God, for whatever reason, uses a person and just spreads Christ. And I mean, to say that there's no such thing as revival is ridiculous, because there's been revivals throughout history where just all of a sudden 100,000 like whole cities wake up sometimes to Christ, and it's been recorded and it does happen. So I mean, we can argue what you want to call that. Okay, you don't want to call it a revival, that's fine. Okay,
what
you autistic person.
What's so strange to me about the whole situation, and before I really understood what was going on, was, and I started reading or reading more about it and stuff, because I heard about it obviously on social media. And I'm like, so, but the first people I'm not seeing a non-Christian criticize this, but the first people everybody's been criticizing are professing Christians. And I'm like, all right,
Dude,
so do you want to wake up
each other up? Have you ever seen libertarians talk about other libertarians?
Yes.
Have you ever seen anarchists talk about other anarchists?
Yes.
Like, yeah, Christians are your worst enemy. You're like, oh, so Jesus is doing an awesome thing. I'm gonna shit all over it.
Right. I was like, I'm like, wait a second. I said, do y'all want to wake up and
they
see
don't
news
do
about
exactly
a balloon
the
being
way
shot?
I think is correct.
Right. And so you want to wake up and hear about the United States government shooting down a balloon, or do you want to read about Christians praising Jesus? It's good news. It's good news. It's better than what we're used to seeing on social media, or what we're used to seeing on corporate media and all this stuff. Why is this a problem for folks? I still cannot figure that out. And I try to stay away from debates and stuff anymore as much as possible, because I don't have time anyway. I mean, I work so much and spend so much time working on our own podcasts and stuff. But man, for some reason, there's something about this that I've latched on to. And I spend a lot of time on our own show, even, this, picking on the church because of the way Christians are behaving. And when I saw what was going on, I was like, all right, y'all are upset you're a Christian. You're upset with a bunch of Christians praising Jesus. Well, it doesn't look like how I worship, so it looks different. So I'm going to criticize it. And this might get me in trouble with some of my Christian friends, but the vast majority of the folks who I've seen criticize this are Calvinists and Lutherans. I'm not
Lutherans are silly, and I don't understand Calvinists, and I know Calvinists are odd. Whatever, I love you guys, but I know that there's a couple weird things that I've heard. I don't know enough to criticize you guys, so I'm not going to talk shit to Calvinists. But I know Lutherans are goofballs. Either shit or get off the pot. Are you Catholic or you're not?
I'm not gonna. I mean,
I don't even care.
I love them all too, but it's just something I noticed about this. And a friend of mine, we were texting last night actually about this, and she's a Calvinist, and she's like, she goes, I've not understood how Calvinists are behaving with this. She goes, I think it's a great thing that's going on in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And she goes, I had to leave a lot of these Calvinist groups on social media because they seem so like they're the elites of the everybody, and we don't need to get into all that. But I just thought I just think the whole topic is fascinating about how
Well,
Christians are shooting themselves in the foot with all this.
so my so I guess this was a couple churches ago. This was my this was a pastor of mine. It's a good friend of mine. He ended up going to Africa to be like he's still a pastor at a church over there, but it's like a mission type of thing that he's doing in Tanzania. But he was very open minded to a lot of these different things, and he was a really interesting guy. He was actually a libertarian anarchist as well. He was actually the first guy to kind of bring me back to the church a little bit. My mom had been bugging me to come and check out church, and so I came in there, and like I've told this story before, like I was waiting for him to say something that was going to piss me off, and he didn't. And then so I talked to him after church, and I just threw up all of my political ideas and beliefs, and I told him I don't think American flag should ever be in a church, and I was like throwing all the anarchist stuff at him, and he was like 100% agree, because you don't see any flags in here, because we'd never have that, and because we serve Christ, not the United States. I was like, who the hell is this guy? But one thing he was really open to was just like he call it the little C and the big C, and he goes like we're all part of like Christ's kingdom, and he says so like in that weird way. It's not it's not universalism in any way, but it kind of in the fact that he's like, look, Catholics are our brothers in Christ. Lutherans are our brothers in Christ. Like all, these folks are our brothers in Christ. That sort of thing. And he was really big about like God is so big. He goes, why do we think we know exactly the way to worship Jesus? And if you don't worship Jesus this exact way, then you're wrong. You know what I mean? And that kind of silly thing. And he's like, the way people connect with Christ is different. Like there are people that like, there's the people that were, pray in tongues. And he goes, if that's the way that you connect to the Holy Spirit, he goes, then that's the way you connect to the Holy Spirit. He goes, there's people that go out in nature and they sit under a tree near like a river, and they can sit there and they can connect to to Jesus in that way, and he goes, there's no necessarily wrong way to connect with Jesus, as long as you're connecting with the Holy Spirit, if you're connecting with Christ. And I thought that was a really interesting and unique perspective that you don't hear from many pastors. No, typically I hear pastors say, hey, this is the correct way to talk to God, and let me tell you how. And
didn't Jesus give us a blueprint on how to pray? How many Christians do you know follow that blueprint on how to pray? Sometimes I don't know how to pray. Sometimes I'm just talking. A lot of the times when I'm talking to Jesus, if something's on my mind, and a lot of the time it's when I'm at work, honestly. I mean, because I got some time. I'm almost on my own quite a bit at work. So I've got a lot of time to think, if the machine's running the way it's supposed to be running, and I'm just kind of hanging out, watching it do its thing. So I got a lot of time to sit and talk to Jesus. And I think that's praying. You're just having a conversation with your guy, just talking. You're just kind of telling him, you're not asking for anything, or maybe you are, or whatever. But the idea that Christians have to connect with Jesus in a certain way is asinine to me. I mean, because he's always there. He didn't go anywhere.
To me, the more silly part of this is like we probably agree. The majority of American Christians agree on like 75% of things, and then it's like the silly parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, like when it comes to like charismatics,
this is what we're arguing about, and this is what we're getting mad about, and we're like, "What? Revivals aren't real. You can't use that word." Like, what? Why? God can't? Are you limiting God? You're saying God can't do this, or God won't do this, or this is an idea in your head, and so this is making you upset right now? Well, why don't we just look at what's happening over here and say like, wow, well, whatever we want to call that, Jesus is really touching a lot of people's lives right now. Let's call that a good thing.
Yes. Let's be happy about it. You brought up charismatics a while ago, and there was a time, in my times in Southern Baptist churches, I was like, that's wrong. My first marriage, she was a Pentecostal.
Dude, that's the wildest thing to me, that a Southern Baptist man married a UPC.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't UPC at the time, but she had she was there. She had that in her family, and then she got back to UPC, and it caused a lot of things. And so I did a lot of studying on the speaking in tongues. I would talk to my Southern Baptist friends about it, and there was a time that I was totally against it. Now it's one of those things I just don't care. I don't care. I don't care if you want to speak in tongues. I don't understand it, but it's okay if you want to. You're talking to the same king that I'm talking to.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%, man. I grew up Pentecostal, and I still am charismatic in a lot of ways. I still speak in tongues, and I can admit that I think a lot of it is silly. But it's how people connect, and whatever you want to call that, like, even if it's intention, even if it's just a silly sound that I'm making with my mouth, like, what am I doing? I'm doing this using my intention right now, and I'm talking to Jesus, and I'm praying for someone right now. Let's say that it's all silly and it's just goofy sounds that are coming out of my mouth. I still think, even if I'm speaking in Mandarin or something, it doesn't matter. But I'm still, like, with the intent. I'm sitting there laying hands and, like, praying for someone that Jesus is going to touch their life. I think that has power.
yeah.
So
why we nitpick the 25% and
exactly.
lose focus on the 75%? I mean, it's wild to me, man. It's Christians are some of the strangest human beings I've ever come across, and I'm one of them, But that's what we're trying to do, is just with the Bad Roman and with the No Keep It Christ Network, to just get back to that guy, get back to following Jesus, because he really does have our own best interest in mind.
But what I wanted to say a little bit earlier, I got off track. At my church, I'm kind of like, I'm working right now 7 days a week, so I haven't been at church for like a month or two, which is kind of a bummer. But I'm kind of a semi-assistant pastor over there. I go and I definitely. Anyways, I preach sometimes. I get up there and give sermons and stuff. And what I was saying is, like, that these people are, like, ripe for that type of message. Like, I'm very specific with what I preach up there when I do a sermon up there. And this one sermon that I was giving, I was just expressing, because this was after Jesus was crucified and died and rose again, right? And this was some of his apostles. They are, like, the Pharisees are, like, working with the Romans and stuff right now, and they're upset that these I want to say it was Matthew and Luke. I don't remember though. I got to double check. Maybe it's Peter and Paul. I don't know. Anyways, they were sitting there. They were spreading the message of Jesus Christ, and they were like, "Look, you need to stop talking about Jesus, or we're going to put you to death." Right? We're arresting you guys, and there's this very specific quote out of here, and I got to look it up, but he just said, "Who am I supposed to serve?"
We came along on one.
Craig, you okay? Craig. Uh-oh. Craig.